Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The Lopez's yard used to be beautiful. Now, it's underwater. What happened? We'll find out at the end of this video. But first, if you plan to build a house or buy land, be aware of detention ponds. And in today's video, we have the top things you should know. Number 1. What is a detention pond? A detention pond is a depression that collects and slowly releases stormwater from a large drainage area. It collects runoff but is not permanently covered with standing water. Number 2. What is a retention pond? A retention pond is a large constructed depression in an urban landscape that receives and stores the stormwater runoff from big drainage areas. It normally holds a permanent pond of water. Number 3. What's the difference between a detention and a retention pond? While there are a few technical distinctions between the way the two are constructed, in general, a detention pond will only temporarily store water, while a retention pond permanently holds it. Number 4. If you have either a detention or a retention pond on or near your property, you may be wondering, who is responsible for its maintenance? Typically, an HOA or municipality will manage a detention or retention pond. But if you have one on your property, you may be responsible for it. And number 5. Which is better, a detention or a retention pond? Well, it largely depends on the climate, precipitation levels, and other conditions of your area. But in general, a detention pond has 2 advantages. It requires less space and also costs less than a retention pond. However, because they do not store water, detention ponds often do not improve water quality and can detract from property values. Alternatively, a retention pond, because it usually looks like any other pond, can serve as an aesthetic or recreational amenity, which means that it can add value to your neighborhood or property. But having said that, there's one important disadvantage to a retention pond. If the retention pond on or near your property is not designed or constructed properly, it can actually do more harm than good. Just ask the Lopez's of Chappaqua, New York. Rudy and Sharon Lopez had a beautiful backyard. They had planted a vegetable garden, installed a badminton court, and laid out lawn chairs around their half-acre property. But by the end of 1990, Rudy's tractor lawnmower lay rusting, and the couple were using a raft to row across their old badminton court. What happened? Well, the previous year, their neighbor, Mr. Harbin, whose land was on a wetland, won approval to subdivide his 2-acre property and build another house, despite the fact that the area was subject to unexplained flooding. The subdivision plan went through 5 years of negotiations with town planning staff, and was finally approved after the neighbor hired a landscape architect to incorporate a retention pond that would soak up excess flood water. Yet, after the project was approved, Mr. Harbin had declined to hire the landscape architect to supervise construction. Since the town did not supervise the construction project either, it is not clear what happened, but something clearly went very wrong. One theory is that the construction crew may have damaged a pre-existing underground drain, unleashing a new torrent of water into the Lopez's land and creating a pond the size of a football field, deep enough to canoe in. Sadly, the pond appeared to be permanent and was also growing in size. A short while later, it pushed past the sandbags the family had erected to protect their basement and knocked out the furnace. When they had an engineer come out to inspect the damage, they were told the house was no longer habitable, as the flooding was undermining both the home's foundation and septic system. Unfortunately, there was very little the Lopez's could do. For despite the Lopez's claiming it was the town's problem for approving the project, they were told there was little that could be done to help them. Of course, this was 30 years ago, and today it is much harder to create a subdivision project on a wetlands as the Lopez's neighbor did. But this is a good example of why it is important to ensure that any detention ponds on or near your property are constructed correctly. Otherwise, you too may need a canoe to play in your backyard. But what do you think? Do you have any stories about detention or retention ponds? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down properties at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.